Welcome back. It's now time to go in depth. Tonight, we continue our look at the case for reparations. On August 1, African descendants in the British Caribbean celebrated 175 years of emancipation. But there's still an argument about being compensated for all those years of slavery, and that argument has taken a political twist with the involvement of Caricom. Here's part 2 of our look at reparations in the Caribbean. On July 5, 2013, the final day of the 34th Caricom Heads of Government meeting in Trinidad and Tobago, Caribbean leaders agreed to take action on the matter of reparations for native genocide and slavery. Specifically, each Caricom country agreed to establish a National Reparations Committee, and the chair of each country's committee will sit on a Caricom Reparations Commission. 6 Caricom prime ministers will provide political oversight to the group. The decision to make this bold move was unanimous. Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, is credited with spurring the action after making a presentation to the Caricom heads at the regional meeting. He is one of the 6 PMs that will guide the commission. It's a cause that he has been passionate about for years.
Both native genocide and African slavery are fundamentally responsible for the underdevelopment of these countries in the Caribbean. There's an awful legacy left, and we have to have a mature, robust, sensible conversation with the British, the French, the Dutch to fashion responses relating to appropriate recompense. After all, they left us with very little secondary schooling. The infrastructure, hardly anything was there for tertiary. The conditions of the road, the question of housing, the nature of the economy, and culture. Case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. British colonialism was here from 1763 till the 1960s. That's 200 years plus. In those 200 years, they built 2 secondary schools, one for boys and one for girls, one for each 100 years of colonialism. Is that acceptable? I'm in the office 12 years and a bit. I opened 10 secondary schools. The range of the package of issues touching and concerning this legacy of underdevelopment, they're there for us to see. And we need to have this conversation leading towards an apology and appropriate recompense.
Another consistent player in the Caribbean call for reparations has been Mike Henry, a Jamaican member of Parliament. Henry tabled a resolution in the House of Representatives in 2007 and retabled it this year. Be it resolved that this honorable House, with a view to establishing a united and common position, debate the proposition that reparation is due to the countries of the displaced descendants. Be it further resolved that the government accommodate any citizen or group of citizens who wishes to enter into dialogue on repatriation to Liberia and to facilitate their request. And be it further resolved that the nations due to make reparations be called upon to provide compensation by way of cash and or debt relief.
I'm seeking to have that money, same amount of money paid to the slaves or the countries who ended up with slaves, right, which is the Caribbean countries, because that was what the 20 million was for. Then with a conscience vote in Parliament, because there's never been a political decision that we are entitled to claim reparations. Now, once you get a political decision by a Parliament of Caribbean, then you can now have the right to take it to the International Court of Justice. And this is where at the moment I have a different position from what Caricom is doing. Because you see, Caricom is not a political body. It cannot make a political decision. And all that you require to move on from here is a political decision. So whether it's St. Vincent, whether it's Grenada, whether it's Barbados, or whoever is prepared, I'm saying that I'm demanding from my Jamaican Parliament a Jamaican decision that the abuse of human rights, that the utilization of labor to produce the economic value for Great Britain and paying only the absentee slave owners is wrong.
Was it ever debated?
It was debated. It was agreed that it had to be a matter we should take decision on. Now, in that context, what took place is that they decided that we'd try to bring all the Caricom countries rather than have it Jamaica, that we would send the reparations committees, which were part of what was agreed in Africa, right, as to be established, and then seek to get the knowledge of public around the program. But I mean, it's so well known, why do we want to spend money to send back through overall? Parliament is elected. I'm elected to represent people, and I'm there to make a decision. Made it a private member's motion because I never wanted anybody to divide between JLP and PNP, okay? And I asked for a conscience vote. So I tried in every way to move it along the line that it needs to be addressed in the psyche, the mind, and the history of our country. I think that it gained enough wings, and I think that everybody who spoke in the successive debates, there wasn't one against. But when it came to the final point now, to get a vote, then I found people started to shift, only in respect of following some party lines maybe.
And that is the challenge facing Caricom, despite the resolution by the regional body. Getting the political majority, even if it is the popular view, may prove to be an uphill battle. And even among the general population, some argue the sentiment about reparations is lukewarm at best. Dr. Gonsalves says that's where leadership comes in.
That's why you have leadership, you know. That's why you have leadership. You can't wait until you have everybody or an overwhelming majority feel that way. You're going on and you're continuing the educational process. But you have to go along. Look, see, you're talking almost 250 years. So what are you talking about waiting till the cows come home? There's unanimity in Caricom. That's why we're having a Caricom commission established. And that's why we have a subcommittee of the heads of conference to guide this particular process. Some people say that, oh, that's top down, you must have it grassroots. Well, I'm a grassroots man, and I represent grassroots. And the people who vote for me, they talk to me about this. Caricom has 4 central purposes. 1, functional cooperation on a wide range of matters. They're cooperating functionally in this. Secondly, to coordinate foreign policy. This is also a foreign policy issue. Thirdly, to address the question of security, which is also a political issue. And trade, economic integration. Why people think that Caricom is only an economic integration mechanism? So when I hear that kind of talk, Caricom consists of governments. And when we work together, we have the strength, we have the unity.
However, Henry believes Caricom is not the right avenue to drive this battle. Is it that in principle you agree with the Caricom move to form this reparations commission, but you just don't think that it's practical?
No, I laud it, and it strengthens the case. And I'm very happy because that was part of, I think, former Prime Minister's Golding presentation at the time, right? When we debated this matter, right? And certainly, I think that all the Caribbean countries, which because the payment was to be the Caribbean countries, I welcome it, I love it, I admire it, and I compliment everyone. The basic point is Caricom is not a political body with a political parliament. You see, that's why grouping it together is not the same. Because France, I don't think they would have totally said that. Because Haiti paid France for their freedom from slaves. It was a reverse to Great Britain. Haiti paid France to free their people. Okay? In the Caribbean, or the English-speaking slave trading countries, right? Okay? They paid their slave owners, right? For the loss of their labor, okay? And therefore, that's why my narrow position to begin with is that act of British Parliament and the approval of British Parliament which confirmed the economic and the labor value at 20 million. And that is what I'm saying, the slaves themselves must be paid.
Despite that argument, others note that individual parliaments within Caricom can pass their own resolutions and with that come together as a collective body to take a case to the ICJ.
We want to have, first of all, a conversation. And that conversation, we will put together the direct contemporary legacy of underdevelopment from native genocide and slavery. And if that conversation doesn't bear fruit, not something confrontational, but if it doesn't bear fruit, there are international tribunals which we can go to, like the International Court of Justice, the ICJ.
I'm saying you paid 20 million pounds. First, by your act of parliament, you abolished slavery, created manumission, and then you paid the slave owners for the loss of their slaves. I'm saying that in much the same way, you must now pay the descendants of the slaves you left in these countries, and you must pay them the same amount of money. And it's by an act of parliament you must demand that, and through the courts of the International Court of Justice.
But even that would be just the beginning. Caricom leaders also want reparations for native genocide. When the Europeans came to the Caribbean in the 1400s, there were thousands of people already living here: the Taínos, the Arawaks, the Caribs, and others. And in St. Vincent, a special group called the Garifuna, the offspring of escaped African slaves and Caribs. The Garifuna have a special history among Caribbean peoples. Unlike the Taínos and Arawaks, their population was not entirely decimated, and their descendants survive along the coast of Central America, in Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize.
The British came in 1763. The first thing they did was to declare all the lands to belong to the British. Then they proceeded to sell most of it to English people and put the money in the British treasury. That is worth now billions of dollars in today's value. So what happened? Shouldn't I get that money? Or shouldn't some calculation be put in place which relates to that? Because it dispossessed people of the land. And by 1800, imagine the Garifuna had 150 square miles for themselves, which is just over 100,000 acres of land. By 1800, the British had quarantined them on 238 acres of the most inhospitable land. They either killed or deported an aggregate of about 7,500 Garifuna. It was a bloodbath. After they killed the Right Excellent Joseph Chatoyer, chief of the Garifuna people, and they went on a rampage with genocide. They put 5,000 and something of them on an offshore island, part of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And more than half of the 5,000 died in 6 months. Hunger, lack of water, disease, and the others they sent to the Bay of Honduras, Rattan Island, which is different to how it is now. In those days, the historians tell us that only lizards and iguanas could survive on Rattan Island, but they put the Garifuna there. Didn't expect them to survive, you know.
So it is evident that the claim is massive and all-encompassing. A dollar figure could be enough to wipe out the national debts of all Caribbean countries. That's if the members of Caricom are willing to truly fight for it.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up.
And tune in on Monday for part 3 of our Reparations series featuring members of the Rastafarian movement. That's it for In Depth. Stay tuned. After the break, it's time for sports.